And ladies and gentlemen, what began as a protest has soon spiraled into scenes of unprecedented chaos. The streets of national capital turned into a battleground. Violence has erupted from both sides of the barricades. Take a look at this. A police vehicle coming under attack as protesters are seen smashing its windows, damaging the vehicle and pelting stones. Scenes underscoring what began as a demonstration descending into violent clashes. Both police personnel and official property that have come under attack. Let's also, of course, tell you about the confrontation which has reached a flashpoint as protesters breached police barricades and surged ahead. Within moments, a large crowd had gathered beyond the security cordon, forcing police to scramble to contain the advancing mob. As tensions mount, several protesters are also seen concealing their identities, pulling scarves, masks and cloth over their faces. Visuals showing attempts to cover up facial features even as crowd continues to swell around the protest site. And on the other side, viewers, these visuals capture a lone protester completely surrounded by police personnel. Other officers are closing in from every direction before he's repeatedly struck. Within moments, there are others in the crowd who've rushed towards him, apparently trying to shield him and pull him to safety. The entire sequence unfolds in a matter of seconds, laying bare the sheer intensity of the confrontation as the streets descended into chaos. There's another set of visuals which show the riot police moving in with force as they attempt to disperse the crowd. Officers fanning out across the streets, chasing protesters who scatter in different directions as the crackdown intensifies. This confrontation spilled across the roads, capturing the frantic moments as police move to clear the site. In fact, I'm told that we have some of our reporters on ground as well. We're going to be cutting across to them in just a moment to quickly line them up because there are some ground reports that have been coming in. And in fact, there are other disturbing moments from these protests also coming in. There's a woman protester who's seen being slapped during the confrontation. These visuals appear to show a senior police official who's identified as a DCP allegedly, who struck her in the middle of the chaos. Moments later, this officer is confronted by several people from the crowd as well. And as the clashes have reached their most intense phase, the cameras have captured moments that are difficult to ignore. One protester appears to beg for mercy as police action continues around him. Nearby, another man lies motionless on the road while the confrontation rages on. And amidst this chaos, there's another image. A teenager finds himself encircled by police personnel. There's very little room to escape. Moments later, he's seen being slapped and repeatedly struck as the confrontation continues around him. Let's quickly tell you about the history of what has happened in the streets of Delhi. How have these streets been the stage for India's biggest protests and some of the most controversial crackdowns as well? Because every generation has witnessed these moments when demonstrations give way to confrontation, forcing the state and protesters into direct conflict. The first, of course, that I'd like to remind our viewers is about Mahendra Singh Tikai's protest in 1988. Farmers laying siege to Delhi's boat club. What happened over here is that lakhs camped in the heart of the capital on these lawns that surrounded what was then called Rajpath and is now called Kartavya Path. The protest ended after fruitful negotiations in 1988. In 2011, we saw the Baba Ramdev crackdown, midnight police operation at Ramlila Maidan. In this case, the protesters were camping outside and they were cleared while the followers slept. Baba Ramdev escaped disguised in women's attire in this particular location as well, but those protesters were peaceful. They were not protesting violently as is being claimed in this case. In India Gate in 2012, this was the epicenter of outrage for the Nirbhaya protests. Lathis, tear gas, water cannons were used over here. Curbs imposed around Raisina Hill. I remember, in fact, reporting from there as well. In 2020 and 2021, Delhi borders turned protest fortresses. Farmers were stopped from entering the capital. However, there was an attempt that was made to lay siege to the Red Fort. Tractor rallies and tractor convoys were brought in, breaking barricades, reaching the Red Fort as well. And of course, a huge amount of violence over here as well that was attempted by the protesters, the farmers, in fact, who entered the Red Fort, and of course, later the police having to crack down on that location. And for more on this, let's go right across to our guest. Joining us with us is Mr. Prakash Singh, who's a former DGP of BSF. We also have Mr. Vikram Singh, who's a former DGP of Uttar Pradesh. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Mr. Prakash Singh, when you look at the pictures coming out of Jantar Mantar, there's a lot of violence. There are pictures of it. There are many clips that are going viral on social media. On the one hand, you have the protesters who say that there was excessive force that was used against them. On the other hand, there are pictures of the protesters who are also seen attacking men in uniform and even journalists. What is one to make of what has happened here, and how has the issue really spiraled out of hand, in your view?
I think the situation has gone out of hand because the agitation, the genuine grievances of the students that was hijacked by certain political parties which have their own agenda. And by creating violence, by creating mayhem, by creating disturbance, they want to unsettle and disturb the atmosphere and bring the government into disrepute. As far as the use of force is concerned, look, when you are trying to force your way to the parliament and there are no permission for that, there is bound to be resistance by the police, and police is bound to be given orders to take action and, if necessary, use force against the protesters. It is obvious that the police officers on the spot gave instructions for lathi charge and tear gas. Tear gas was used effectively, but lathi charge, I felt it could have been used more discreetly. But there were instances where somebody has fallen on the ground and yet he was getting bashed up. So, I mean, but in a situation like this, such incidents do happen, and it's very difficult to control once there is force from the protester side, and then there is a resistance or an attempt to thwart the agitation from the police side, and police has the orders to use force.
Right.
Such incidents do happen. They are very unfortunate, but once there is a force from both sides, unfortunate incidents happen.
Mr. Vikram Singh, the question is this. Of course, the protesters are breaking barricades, they're trying to enter the parliament, and they've said that this is a Sansad Chalo march. Obviously, there will be some amount of resistance by the police. But the problem in this case is there are several instances, Mr. Prakash Singh said, where there are clips that purportedly show innocent students who are not engaging in violence. We don't know what has happened before that, at least in the clip, that's what it shows. And they are being beaten up. Perhaps some of them lying down, some of them after being beaten up, and after they move out also, they are further beaten up. And what makes matters worse is that this is a students' protest. So the optics of the police cracking down on students has certainly raised very valid concerns, because there are many who believe that students are raising issues which are applicable for all across society.
Jai Hind, sir. Good evening, Madhav Ji. I would say, taking the Mr. Prakash Singh's point further, you have to analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Of course, it was a student agitation, but do the students on anyway? The criminal elements mixed with the students, do they have a right to bash up 120 Delhi police personnel, which would include 9 IPS officers, burn down 20 police vehicles, as also rough up women police officers? Sorry, this is just not acceptable, and I would salute the restraint and the patience of the Delhi police. They only used 2 of the parameters, that is tear gas and mild lathi charge. They did not use rubber bullets, they did not use solid bullets, and of course, I compliment them for that. But yes, to be taken by surprise and being overwhelmed by a crowd, I would say that we should not have allowed grass to grow underneath our feet. Police can never be taken by surprise. And the change of the police commissioner is indicative of the fact that there was a course correction mystery that was totally avoidable. But the fact of the matter is that we could have done much better. We could have put our best foot forward. There are certain lacuna in the police arrangement that intelligence could have been better. The crowd should not have been allowed to assemble, and the use of force should have been more discreet, appropriate and proportionate.
Right. And, Mr. Prakash Singh, I also want to take you down to some incidents. People are discussing what has happened in the past. For instance, there was a crackdown when there were Nirbhaya protests that happened in 2012. There was a crackdown that happened in Ramlila Maidan when Baba Ramdev and others were sitting. Mahendra Singh Tekayat famously sat outside the boat club. So it's not like this is happening in an isolated manner. Every time that there have been an attempt to try and protest in New Delhi, there has ultimately force has to be used to allow, for instance, a parliament session to go on. So there are many who are saying in this case, if the threat is to march towards parliament, then obviously there would be some amount of force used. But the question over here is this, that is it any different from what we have seen in the past?
It is difficult to compare. Actually, performance depends on the assessment of the situation and what preparations the police have made, whether they were prepared to face the kind of situation where they were confronted with, and the leadership on the spot. What role he is playing, what are his instructions to the force. It's very difficult to compare these different situations. But I would still say that our riot dispersal in terms of training, there is a need for greater sophistication, there is a need for greater refinement. And while Delhi police has been facing these crowds time and again, I think there is a lot of scope for improvement, and especially in the lathi drill. Lathi drill, I find it not a very happy situation, because lathi drill is also an organized and synchronized use of lathi against the crowd, and not just individual policemen going berserk and beating up one man here, one man there. Lathi drill has, I think this needs to be streamlined by the police, and not that individual policemen behave in the manner they want.
Right.
They should behave as part of a section or part of a platoon.
Right. And of course, when the crowd swell up like this, of course, there might have been some intelligence failure. There are those questioning Mr. Vikram Singh as to why they didn't act, for instance, a day before. Sonam Wangchuk was picked up on Saturday morning. They could have done something similar, say, on Sunday evening or early morning on Monday and prevented it. Like switching off the internet and all. If it had happened 6 hours earlier, that could have been done. While one appreciates the practical problems of policing on ground, one concern that has been expressed by many on social media especially is that why were policemen in plain clothes wielding batons and beating up others? At least if they were on duty as policemen on guard over there, they should have been in uniform. And that is to an extent borne out by the fact that this evening orders have been issued by Delhi police. Senior officials have told all the officials to come out, down to the constabulary in their uniforms only, and that no plain clothesmen be seen over there. So is that a lapse that has taken place? What is the reason that people in plain clothes were seen beating up with lathis some of the protesters? Can you explain that and contextualize that for our viewers?
Madhavji, I'm so happy that we have raised this question because I have faced such situation for more than 3 decades. And let me tell you that plainclothesmen are not their police officers. They may be local intelligence unit staff. They may be intelligence staff. There may be deployment in plainclothes also. There is deployment in plainclothes as a matter of strategy and policy also. And therefore to say that they were goons dressed in civils, this is absolutely absurd and it is unacceptable. There's deployment and the deployment is on the duty chart by name, plainclothes dutymen in front of the procession, middle of the procession and behind the procession. This is something that is absolute standard operating procedure. And this is a part of the duty chart and part of the general diary entries too. I would also say that why were they given batons? To the contrary, when you have a hostile man and then you had the also distinct possibility of being overwhelmed and lynched. Therefore, to be armed with an official lathi, I see nothing wrong in that. For the purposes of security, for the purposes of intelligence collection, as also to deter an assault also, I see nothing blatantly wrong in that.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Prakash Singh?
I entirely agree with the plainclothes men. It's very doubtful. I mean, he said they are intelligence officers, but intelligence officers, from my experience, they don't carry batons and they don't involve in sort of beating up the crowd. They are just watching from the sidelines, taking photographs, recording statements. They are people who prefer to be low profile and away from the glare of limelight. If these were constables in plainclothes, that is indefensible. I mean, there is no such sanction, there is no such drill in police manuals. If, as some people allege, I hope it's an allegation and it's not true, that police get ruffians and gundas from outside and use them to beat up the crowd. I mean, I hope this is a wrong allegation. This is an allegation and totally wrong. But if there is any truth in it, I would say that is absolutely, totally indefensible, unjustifiable, and against all rules of police dispersal of riotous crowds.
Right. I'm just going to go through some of the videos. There are, of course, dozens of videos that are circulating on social media, but 2 at least have been starkly different from others, and that's why I'm going to bring them up one by one. And I want to ask you, Mr. Vikram Singh, what has been seen? There is a video that purportedly shows the Northeast Delhi DCP Sandeep Lamba, who is allegedly slapping a woman during the protest, and this appears to be in that area in the vicinity of Parliament Street and the new police headquarters, which is opposite Nirvachan Sajan on Ashoka Road. It appears to be that area from what I can make out at least. This is certainly not acceptable. A police officer, a person in uniform, can certainly not be seen slapping a female individual, a female citizen, a protester or otherwise.
Absolutely, Madhavji, this is unacceptable. But I would also say that the provocation and the sense of insecurity that was there, I would say that everybody was on a short fuse. But whatever be the situation, the police officers are trained for their forbearance, to be patient and not to react in this vitriolic manner and be so aggressive also. If this has happened, I would say Mr. Lava should be taken to task, and this is unacceptable for a senior police officer to behave in a manner as you also did.
Right.
But I would also say, yes, I would not have the temerity to ever to contradict Mr. Prakash Singh Ji, but a sense of decorum would also not allow me to contradict him. Nevertheless, sir, may I tell you, sir, that in the last few decades, it has been the customary practice to put civilian in front of, whether it's a procession, whether it is a bandobast. Plainclothes men are deployed and they are tasked. They do not wear a badge. It's a different matter that they do not carry a baton. This is the first time that they were carrying a baton. Well, that is a matter of debate and that is a matter of discussion. But the fact of the matter is, plainclothes men are always deployed in Sambhal, in Lucknow and elsewhere.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Mr. Prakash Singh as well as Mr. Vikram Singh. Very important discussion, and certainly, of course, both sides of the story we are going to reflect as far as the protests are concerned, and certainly it is an important issue. The core issue of the protesters continues to remain important, but has the law and order action been proportionate? Has it been fair? Has it been justified? We leave it to our viewers to decide.